The Galactic Council Chamber was the most impressive structure in known space. It floated at the heart of Nexus Prime, a station so large that it had its own weather systems and artificial gravity wells. The chamber itself was a vast dome of crystal and light, designed to make every species feel small before the collective wisdom of the 12 elder races. Today, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss what they called the human question. High Counselor Vethener of the Keth hegemony stood at the central podium. His species had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 15,000 years. They were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms, and they moved with the slow confidence of creatures who had never known true challenge. Vethener looked down at the assembled delegates with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "We are here to vote on the petition submitted by the human species," he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "They request observer status on this council." A murmur ran through the assembly. Observer status was the first step toward full membership. It meant a species had proven itself worthy of attention, if not yet respect. "The humans have been under monitored isolation for 50 of their years," Vethener continued. "In that time, our probes have observed their development. Let me share what we have learned." He waved one of his 4 hands, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed Earth, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Their homeworld is pleasant but ordinary. Their population numbers only 12 billion. Their visible fleet consists of 47 vessels, none larger than our standard patrol craft. Another wave brought up images of human ships. They were boxy and utilitarian, with visible engine ports and obvious weapon placements. Compared to the elegant curves of Keth warships or the crystalline beauty of Varathi cruisers, they looked like toys built by children. "Their fastest ship requires 3 months to cross a single sector," Vethener said. "Their weapons are based on primitive kinetic principles. Their shields, such as they are, would fail against a single volley from any vessel in this chamber's defense fleet." Laughter rippled through the assembly. The Keth delegate allowed himself a thin smile. "In short, the humans are exactly what they appear to be. A young species, barely capable of interstellar travel, with no significant military capability and nothing of value to offer this council." He paused for effect. "I recommend we deny their petition. Furthermore, I propose we extend their quarantine zone by an additional 50 light years in all directions. They are not ready for contact with civilized space." The chamber buzzed with discussion. Representatives leaned toward each other, sharing opinions in dozens of languages. The translation systems worked overtime to keep everyone informed. In a small observation gallery above the main floor, a human woman watched the proceedings with careful attention. Dr. Sarah Chun was Earth's diplomatic envoy, sent to represent humanity's interests before the council. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of difficult years. She wore a simple blue suit, the official uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Beside her stood 2 aides, younger members of her team. They looked nervous. One of them, a man named David Park, leaned close to whisper. "They're going to deny us," he said. "I can see it in their body language." "Yes," Chun agreed quietly. "They are. What do we do?" Chun did not answer immediately. She watched as the council prepared to vote. 12 elder species, each with thousands of years of history, each convinced of their own superiority. They had built this system to maintain their power, to keep younger races in their place. The quarantine zones, the observation periods, the endless requirements for advancement. It was all designed to ensure that no new species could ever challenge the established order. The vote took less than a minute. 11-1 against humanity's petition, with only the Melodari abstaining. The extension of the quarantine zone passed with similar ease. "The council has spoken," Vethener announced. The human petition is denied. They will remain in isolation for an additional evaluation period of no less than 100 years. Another murmur of approval from the assembly. Some delegates were already leaving, the matter too trivial to hold their attention. The human envoy may address the council if she wishes, Vethener added, his tone suggesting that he expected nothing of interest. Chum stood. She straightened her jacket and walked down from the observation gallery to the main floor. The journey took several minutes, giving every delegate time to study her. She felt their eyes on her, dismissive and curious in equal measure. When she reached the speaking platform, she looked up at Vethener. He towered over her, more than twice her height. His forearms were folded across his chest in what she knew was a Keth gesture of superiority. "High Counselor," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "On behalf of humanity, I thank the Council for considering our petition." Vethener's eye ridges rose slightly. He had expected anger, perhaps, or pleading. This quiet dignity was unexpected. "We accept the Council's decision," Chun continued. "We understand that we have not yet proven ourselves worthy of your attention. We will return to our space and continue our development, as you suggest." "A wise response," Vethener said. There was a hint of condescension in his voice. "Perhaps in another century you will be ready." Chun nodded. "Perhaps. May I ask one question before I depart?" Vethener gestured permission with one of his lower hands. "In your observation of humanity, did your probes examine the asteroid belts in our outer system? Or the regions beyond our heliopause?" The question seemed to puzzle Vethener. "We observed your inhabited worlds and your fleet movements. There was no need to examine empty space." "I see," Chun said. "Thank you for clarifying." She bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect that the Keth found oddly charming. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her aides fell in behind her, their faces carefully neutral. As they left the chamber, David Park leaned close again. "That's it? We just accept it?" "We thank them for their consideration," Chun said. "We express our respect. We depart gracefully. But they just insulted us in front of the entire galaxy. They called us primitives. They extended our quarantine by 50 light years. Yes, they did. And we do nothing?" Chun stopped walking. They were in a corridor now, away from the main chamber, away from watching eyes. She turned to face her aides. "What would you have me do, David? Shout at them? Threaten them? Make demands we cannot enforce?" She shook her head. "We are small and weak in their eyes. Anything we say or do will only confirm their beliefs. So we just accept it." Chun reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew a small device, no larger than a communication unit. It was smooth and silver, with a single button on its surface. "We accept their decision," she said. "We return to our ship. We prepare to depart." She pressed the button. Nothing visible happened. No sound, no light, no indication that the device had done anything at all. But somewhere in the fabric of space, a signal traveled faster than light, faster than anything the Council believed possible. "What was that?" Park asked. Chun put the device away. "A request for consultation. It seems the Council has made its views clear. Now it is time to make ours equally clear." She resumed walking toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Her aides exchanged confused glances, but followed without further questions. Behind them, in the great chamber, the Council continued its business. Other matters required attention. Trade disputes between the Keth and the Varathi. A border conflict in the outer reaches. A plague on a newly discovered world. The human question was already forgotten, filed away as a minor administrative matter. Vethener returned to his private quarters, satisfied with the day's work. He had maintained the order of things. He had kept the primitives in their place. In 1,000 years, perhaps, humanity might be ready for contact. Or perhaps they would destroy themselves, as so many young species did. Either way, it was not his concern. He stood before his window, looking out at the stars. 15,000 years of Keth dominance. 12,000 years of council rule. The galaxy was stable, predictable, controlled. New species rose and fell, but the elder races endured. This was the natural order. This was how things had always been. In the darkness beyond Nexus Prime, beyond the range of any sensor the Council possessed, something moved. It was vast and silent, traveling through dimensions the elder races had never discovered. It had been waiting for 50 years. The signal reached it in the space between heartbeats, and it began to move toward the light. On the docking platform, Dr. Sarah Chun boarded her small diplomatic vessel. It was exactly what the Council expected from humanity. Compact, practical, unremarkable. She sat in the command chair and watched Nexus Prime recede in the view screen. "Ambassador," the pilot said, "we're receiving a transmission. Coded signal, human encryption. Let me hear it." A voice came through the speakers. It was male, calm, professional. "Ambassador Chun, this is the Thermopylae. We received your signal. What are your orders?" Chen was quiet for a moment. 50 years of patience. 50 years of playing the role the Council expected. Smiling while they dismissed humanity as children. Accepting insults with grace. Building, always building, in. The alarms on Nexus Prime began as a whisper. A sensor technician in the station's monitoring center noticed an unusual reading on his display. A mass signature had appeared at the edge of detection range, larger than anything that should be in that sector of space. He checked his instruments twice, then 3 times. The readings made no sense. The signature suggested a vessel of enormous size, but it had appeared from nowhere. No hyperspace emergence. No drive trail. One moment empty space, the next, something vast and impossible. "Supervisor," the technician called. "I have an anomalous contact." The supervisor, a Keth officer with decades of experience, walked over to examine the display. His 4 hands moved across the controls, running additional scans. "There is nothing scheduled to arrive from that vector," he said. "Query the contact. Demand identification." The technician sent the standard challenge. Seconds passed. Then a response came through, clear and calm. "Nexus Prime Control. This is the Earth vessel Thermopylae. We are on a diplomatic mission to address the Galactic Council. Please clear our approach vector." The supervisor stared at the display. "Earth vessel? The humans?" More sensor data arrived as the ship moved closer. The supervisor felt his heart begin to race. The vessel was 4 kilometers long. Its power readings were off the scale. Its drive signature was unlike anything in the Keth database. "That cannot be a human ship," he said. "They have no such capabilities." "Sir, the transponder codes confirm human origin. The communication encryption matches Earth diplomatic protocols." The supervisor reached for the emergency alert. Within moments, alarms were sounding throughout Nexus Prime. The Council security fleet began emergency deployment. Representatives were summoned from their quarters. The Great Chamber was reopened. High Counselor Vethener arrived to find chaos. Delegates were shouting questions. Security officers were running to their stations. The holographic display above the chamber showed a single approaching contact, and the data beside it made his gray skin pale. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "A human warship," the security commander reported. "It appeared from nowhere. It is approaching at speeds that should be impossible." "One ship?" Vethener's initial fear began to fade. "One ship threatens us? We have 200 vessels in the defense fleet. One ship is nothing. High Counselor, with respect, look at the readings. Vethner studied the display more carefully. The human vessel was larger than any warship in the Council fleet. Its power output exceeded the combined output of a dozen Keth dreadnoughts. And it was still accelerating. How did they build this? Someone asked. Our probes observed their shipyards. They had nothing like this. Clearly our observation was incomplete, another delegate said. The Thermopylae arrived at the edge of the station's defensive perimeter. It did not slow. It did not alter course. It simply slid through the minefield that had protected Nexus Prime for 8,000 years, as if the weapons did not exist. Mines are not responding, the security commander reported, his voice tight with fear. The human vessel is projecting some kind of interference field. Our weapons cannot lock. Fire manually, Vethner ordered. Destroy that ship. 3 Keth destroyers moved to intercept. They opened fire with plasma batteries that could melt asteroid fortresses. The Thermopylae did not even raise shields. The plasma simply washed over its hull and dissipated harmlessly. Impact confirmed, the security commander said. No damage detected. Their hull armor is absorbing our weapons. Vethner watched the display with growing disbelief. The 3 destroyers fired again and again, emptying their magazines into the human ship. Nothing worked. The Thermopylae continued its approach, ignoring the attacks completely. Then it responded. A single beam of light reached out from the human vessel. It touched the lead destroyer for less than a second. When it passed, the destroyer's weapons were gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Cut away with surgical precision, leaving the hull intact but the ship defenseless. Warning shot, someone whispered. The Thermopylae came to rest 300 kilometers from Nexus Prime. It hung in space like a mountain, dwarfing everything around it. Its running lights pulsed in a slow rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. A transmission came through to the council chamber. The holographic display shifted to show a human face. He was a man of perhaps 60 years, with iron-gray hair and a scarred face. He wore a military uniform of simple black, with no decorations except a single silver star on each shoulder. Good evening, Council, the man said. His voice was pleasant, conversational. My name is Marcus Webb. I am the captain of the Earth vessel Thermopylae. I apologize for the unannounced visit, but we felt that the matter of our observer status deserved further discussion. Vethner found his voice. You dare to threaten this council? One ship, no matter how large, cannot stand against the combined fleets of 12 civilizations. Webb smiled. It was not a threatening expression. If anything, it seemed almost sad. High Counselor, I am not here to threaten anyone. I am here to demonstrate something that the Council seems to have forgotten. And what is that? That appearances can be deceiving. Webb gestured to someone off-screen. If the Council will direct its attention to the following coordinates, I believe our point will become clearer. Numbers appeared on the display. The Council's sensors turned to the indicated location, a region of seemingly empty space 3 light minutes from the station. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, more ships appeared. They emerged from whatever strange dimension had hidden them, sliding into normal space like predators rising from deep water. Human vessels, each one as large and powerful as the Thermopylae. They came in formations of 10, then 20, then 50. Dreadnoughts and carriers and destroyers and cruisers, classes of ships that no species had ever seen before. The Council watched in stunned silence as the count rose. 100 ships. 150. 200. The human fleet continued to grow, filling the space around Nexus Prime with vessels that should not exist. When it finally stopped, 300 human warships surrounded the station. Aye, Counselor, Webb said calmly. I believe you were saying something about combined fleets? Vethener could not speak. His mind was struggling to process what he was seeing. For 15,000 years, the Keth had been the dominant military power in the galaxy. Their fleet was legendary. Their weapons were feared. No species had ever challenged their supremacy. And now 300 human ships hung in space around them, any one of which could apparently destroy an entire Keth squadron without effort. How? The word came from the Vorathi delegate, her crystalline voice shaking. How is this possible? We observed you. We watched your development. You had nothing like this. Webb's expression remained calm and pleasant. You watched what we wanted you to see. You observed the fleet we built for you to observe. 47 small vessels, primitive drives, basic weapons. Everything you expected from a young species, just learning to walk among the stars. He paused, letting his words sink in. What you did not observe was the real fleet. The one we built in the asteroid belts, you never scanned. In the rogue planets, you never catalogued. In the dimensions, you never knew existed. For 50 years, while you laughed at our primitive ships and dismissed our petitions, we prepared. Prepared for what? Vethener managed. For this moment. For the conversation we are about to have. What conversation? Webb leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, there was steel in his voice. The conversation about respect. The conversation about arrogance. The conversation about what it means to underestimate a species simply because they are young. The council chamber was silent. 300 human warships waited in space around them. The defense fleet had withdrawn to the station's shadow, their weapons proven useless. You called us primitives, Webb continued. You denied our petition. You extended our quarantine. You treated us as children to be managed, not as a civilization to be respected. If you have come for revenge, Vethener began. If we had come for revenge, High Counselor, this station would already be debris. Every ship in your defense fleet would be wreckage. We have the power to destroy you utterly. Surely you can see that now. Vethener looked at the display. 300 ships. Weapons that could cut through their defenses like paper. Technology that should have taken millennia to develop. Yes, he admitted. I can see that. Good. Then perhaps you can also see that destruction is not why we are here. Webb rose from his command chair and walked closer to the camera. His scarred face filled the display, and his eyes seemed to look directly at each member of the council. We are here to ask a question, High Counselor. A question that the council should consider very carefully before answering. What question? Webb smiled again, and this time there was warmth in it. Real warmth mixed with something that might have been hope. We are here to ask what restraint looks like. He spread his hands, encompassing the fleet that surrounded them. 300 ships. Weapons you cannot stop. Technology you cannot match. We could conquer this station in an hour. We could crack your homeworlds in a month. We could end 12 civilizations in a year. The power to destroy everything you have built is right here, right now, in our hands. The council waited, and we choose not to use it. Webb let the words hang in the air. That is what restraint looks like. The shuttle that docked at Bay 7 was small and unremarkable. It looked exactly like the diplomatic vessels the council had seen before, compact and utilitarian, nothing impressive. But the beings who stepped off it carried themselves with a quiet confidence that made the honor guard step back. Captain Marcus Webb walked at the head of the delegation. He wore the same simple black uniform he had worn on the screen, with the 2 silver stars on his shoulders. Behind him came 4 officers of various ranks, and at the rear, Dr. Sarah Chun, the diplomat who had accepted the council's rejection with such grace just hours before. The Keth guards escorted them through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Other species stopped to stare as they passed. Word had spread quickly through the station. The humans had a fleet. The humans had weapons. The humans had fooled everyone. When the delegation reached the council chamber, every seat was filled. Representatives from all 12 elder species were present, along with observers from dozens of younger civilizations. The gallery above was packed with witnesses. Whatever happened here would be remembered for generations. Captain Webb walked to the central speaking platform. He looked up at the assembled council without fear or arrogance. His scarred face was calm, almost peaceful. "High Counselor," he said. "Members of the council, thank you for receiving us." Vethner looked down at him from his elevated position. The High Counselor had recovered some of his composure in the past hour, but uncertainty still flickered in his eyes. "Captain Webb, you have demonstrated that humanity possesses military capabilities far beyond what we believed. You have surrounded this station with a fleet that our defenses cannot match. You have every advantage. So I must ask, what do you want?" Webb nodded at the reasonable question. "May I have permission to display some information?" "Nothing threatening. Simply context." Vethner hesitated, then gestured permission. Webb touched the control on his wrist, and the holographic display above the chamber activated. It showed Earth, the small blue world the Council had dismissed as unremarkable. 50 years ago, humanity made first contact with the Melodari trading vessel Song of Dawn. It was a moment we had anticipated for centuries. We had dreamed of meeting other civilizations, of joining a community of intelligent species, of learning from those who had traveled the stars before us. The display shifted to show early contact images. Human diplomats meeting Melodari traders. The exchange of languages and cultural information. The first awkward attempts at communication. The Melodari were kind to us. They explained how the galaxy worked. The Council of Elder Species. The quarantine zones. The observation periods. The long process of proving worthiness for inclusion in civilized space. Webb paused, his expression thoughtful. They also warned us about certain realities. How younger species were treated. How the elder races maintained their dominance. How species that developed too quickly or grew too powerful were often contained, limited, sometimes destroyed. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. We listened to these warnings. We observed how the council treated petition after petition from younger species. Denied, delayed, dismissed. We saw how the quarantine zones expanded over time, always restricting, never welcoming. The display changed again. Now it showed something new. A map of human space, but with additional markers the Council had never seen. So we made a decision. We would play the role you expected. Small ships, limited technology, harmless primitives learning to crawl among the stars. We would accept your observations and your restrictions. We would smile at your condescension and thank you for your wisdom. Webb gestured at the map. And while we played that role, we would build. Not in the places you watched. Not in the shipyards you monitored. But everywhere else. The markers on the map began to light up. Hundreds of them. Hidden facilities in asteroid belts. Research stations in the corona of red dwarf stars. Manufacturing centers in the hearts of rogue planets. Outposts in pocket dimensions that the Council did not know existed. 50 years of construction. 50 years of research. 50 years of preparation for the day when we would need to have this conversation. The display shifted to show the human fleet currently surrounding Nexus Prime. 300 ships. Each one a masterpiece of engineering and weaponry. This fleet represents approximately 10% of humanity's current military capability. The chamber went completely silent. 10%. 300 ships were 10%. The implications were staggering. We have 3,200 warships in active service, Webb continued calmly. Another 4,000 in reserve. We have weapons that can crack planetary crusts and shields that can withstand stellar flares. We have faster-than-light technology that makes your hyperspace drives look like rowing boats. We have been ready for war for 15 years. Vethener found his voice. If you have been ready for war for 15 years, why did you not attack? Why the pretense? Why the diplomatic petition you knew we would deny? Webb's expression softened. Because war was never what we wanted, High Counselor. Power was never the goal. We built this fleet for defense, not conquest. We developed these weapons to protect ourselves, not to destroy others. He stepped forward, closer to the Council's elevated seats. We understood that the galaxy respects strength. We understood that young species are dismissed and marginalized because they cannot defend themselves. So we made ourselves strong. Strong enough that no one could threaten us. Strong enough that we could choose our own path. Then, why are you here? The question came from the Vorathi delegate, a crystalline voice sharp with confusion. If you do not want war, if you do not want conquest, why reveal yourselves? Why demonstrate your power? Webb turned to address her directly. Because we want something more valuable than territory, more important than dominance. We want respect. He gestured at the council around him. Look at yourselves. 12 elder species, each convinced of your own superiority. You have ruled this galaxy for millennia. You have decided which species rise and which species fall. You have treated younger civilizations as children at best, as threats at worst. His voice remained calm, but there was passion beneath the surface. We do not want to replace you. We do not want to destroy what you have built. But we refuse to be treated as primitives simply because we are young. We refuse to wait centuries for the privilege of being heard. We refuse to accept a system designed to keep us small and manageable. Dr. Chun stepped forward to stand beside Webb. Her voice was softer, but no less firm. Humanity has gifts to offer. Not just military technology. Scientific advances that could benefit every species in this chamber. Medical breakthroughs. Engineering solutions. New ways of thinking about old problems. She touched her own wrist device, and the display changed again. Now it showed data streams, research papers, technological specifications. A cure for the Keth aging plague. A solution to the Vorathi crystal decay. Faster-than-light communication systems that could connect the galaxy in real time. Clean energy technologies that could power civilizations for millennia. The council members stared at the display. Some leaned forward, studying the data with obvious interest. Others looked between the humans and their fellow delegates, trying to process what they were seeing. All of this was developed during our 50 years of isolation, Chan said. All of this was prepared as a gift, pending fair treatment. We were ready to share everything the moment we were accepted as equals. Instead, Webb added, you denied our petition. You extended our quarantine. You made it clear that humanity would never be accepted on merit, only on your schedule, according to your rules. He spread his hands. So here we are, not as beggars requesting admission, not as conquerors demanding submission, simply as equals, asking for the respect we have earned. Vethener sat in silence for a long moment. The other council members watched him, waiting. The fate of the galaxy hung on what he would say next. You speak of respect, he said slowly, but you have surrounded us with warships. You have demonstrated that our defenses are worthless against you. How is this not a threat? Webb nodded, acknowledging the point. You are right to ask. Let me answer with a question of my own. He looked up at the High Counselor directly. If humanity wanted to destroy this council, could you stop us? Vethner wanted to say yes. He wanted to claim that the combined fleets of 12 civilizations could defeat any enemy. But he had seen the demonstration. He had watched his weapons fail. He knew the truth. No, he admitted. We could not. Then the fact that this station still exists is our answer. The fact that your fleet still functions is our proof. The fact that we are here talking, instead of conquering, is the only demonstration that matters. Webb's voice softened. We have the power to take what we want. And we choose to ask instead. That is what respect looks like. That is what trust is built on. Not words. Not treaties. Actions. Chun stepped forward again. The Council has a choice to make. You can reject us again. You can call this a threat and respond with hostility. We will withdraw. We will return to our space. We will continue to exist beyond your reach, neither friend nor enemy, simply. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment after Dr. Chun finished speaking. 300 human warships held position outside the station. Inside, 12 elder species wrestled with a reality they had never imagined. High Counselor Vethner looked at the human delegates standing before him. Captain Webb with his scarred face and quiet confidence. Ambassador Chun with her calm dignity. 4 officers who had helped build a fleet in secret while the galaxy laughed at human primitives. You asked for respect, Vethner said finally. You asked for partnership. But how can we trust a species that deceived us for 50 years? Webb considered the question carefully before answering. High Counselor, I could ask you the same thing. How can we trust species that confined us to a quarantine zone? That monitored our every development? That designed systems specifically to keep younger civilizations weak and dependent? Vethner opened his mouth to respond, but Webb continued. But that question leads nowhere productive. We are not here to assign blame or demand apologies. We are here to build something new. He gestured at the council around him. You are right that we deceived you. We showed you what you expected to see, because we knew what happened to species that appeared threatening. We played the role of harmless primitives, because it was the only way to survive long enough to become strong. His voice carried no anger, only simple truth. We did what we had to do. And I believe that every species in this chamber would have done the same if they found themselves in our position. Survival is not something to apologize for. The Melodari delegate, the only species that had voted in humanity's favor, spoke up. Her voice was musical, as all Melodari's speech was. Captain Webb speaks truth. When my people first encountered the council, we too had to choose between deception and destruction. We pretended to be less advanced than we were until we could negotiate from strength. Every species in this chamber has a similar story in their history. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Melodari was right. The Keth themselves had hidden their military capabilities during their early contact with the Vorathi. The Vorathi had concealed their crystal technology from the hegemony that preceded them. Deception was the survival tool of every young species. Very well, Vethner said. I accept that your deception was understandable given the circumstances. But the question remains, what happens now? Dr. Chun stepped forward to answer. What happens now is a choice. Your choice. We have presented our offer. Partnership based on equality. Gifts of technology and medicine shared freely. A new member who adds strength to the council rather than demanding protection from it. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. We are not asking you to surrender your authority or your traditions. We are not demanding changes to how you govern yourselves. We simply ask to be included as what we are, a civilization that has proven its capability and its restraint. And if we refuse? The question came from the Keth military commander, a scarred veteran named Tethrak. If we decide that your deception disqualifies you from trust, Webb answered without hesitation. Then we withdraw. We return to our space. We live as neighbors rather than partners. Our fleet protects our borders and yours. We trade when it benefits both sides. We remain separate, but not hostile. You would accept that outcome? We would prefer partnership. But we will not beg for it. We will not threaten you to obtain it. We have demonstrated what we can do. Now the decision is yours. Tetheric studied the human captain with the experienced eye of a fellow warrior. You could destroy us. You have proven that. Why not simply take what you want? Webb smiled slightly. Because we have already done that, Commander. Just not in the way you mean. He touched his wrist device, and the holographic display changed again. It showed a timeline stretching back 50 years. For 5 decades, while you dismissed us as primitives, we pursued our own path. We developed technologies you did not imagine. We built a fleet you could not detect. We created a civilization that answers to no one but ourselves. The display showed hidden shipyards, secret research stations, the quiet construction of an empire in the shadows. We took our freedom. We took our security. We took our future. Not by conquering others, but by building something of our own. That is what we wanted. That is what we have achieved. He turned to face Vethener directly. What we are offering now is not something we need. It is something we want. We want to share what we have built. We want to contribute to something larger than ourselves. We want to be part of a galactic community that treats its members fairly. His voice grew softer, almost gentle. But if that community does not want us, we will accept the answer with grace. We will return to our space. We will continue to grow and develop and flourish. You will have missed an opportunity, but we will survive. The chamber fell silent again. The council members looked at each other, communicating in glances and subtle gestures. The debate would normally have taken hours, conducted in private chambers according to ancient protocols. But these were not normal circumstances. Finally, Vethener rose from his seat. He was old, even by Keth standards, and the weight of millennia of tradition pressed down on him. But something in his eyes had changed. Something that might have been wisdom, or might simply have been acceptance of unavoidable truth. I have ruled the Keth hegemony for 3 centuries, he said. I have served on this council for 200 years. In all that time, I have never faced a moment like this one. He walked slowly down from his elevated position until he stood on the same level as Webb and Chun. His forearms hung at his sides, and his posture was open, almost vulnerable. I believed that the elder species knew best, that we had earned our authority through time and experience, that younger races needed to be guided, controlled, managed for their own good. He stopped a few feet from Webb and looked the human in the eye. I was wrong. The words hung in the air like a confession. Around the chamber, delegates stared in astonishment. The High Counselor of the Keth, admitting error before the entire galaxy. You did not need our guidance. You did not need our management. What you needed was to be left alone to develop on your own terms. And because we would not give you that freedom, you took it for yourselves. Vethener turned to address the full council. Look at what they have achieved. Look at what they built while we watched what we thought were primitive shipyards. They outhawed us, outbuilt us, outmaneuvered us at every turn. And when they finally revealed themselves, when they had every justification for anger and revenge, they chose mercy instead. He gestured at the human delegation. They came to our door with the power to destroy us and asked for partnership. They offered gifts instead of demands. They presented us with a choice instead of an ultimatum. That is not the behavior of primitives. That is the behavior of a civilization more mature than many of us in this room. The other delegates were listening intently now. Some nodded slowly. Others still looked uncertain. But the tide was clearly shifting. "I cannot speak for the full council," Bethaner continued. "I cannot cast a vote that binds all 12 species. But I can tell you where the Keth stand." He turned back to Webb and extended one of his 4 hands in what was clearly a gesture of respect. "The Keth hegemony formally withdraws its objection to humanity's petition. We recognize Earth and its colonies as a sovereign civilization deserving of full participation in galactic affairs. We apologize for our earlier dismissal and extend our hand in friendship." Webb looked at the outstretched hand for a moment. Then he reached out and clasped it firmly. "The apology is appreciated but not required," Webb said. "You acted according to your understanding. We hold no grudge for that. What matters now is the future we build together." One by one, other delegates rose to speak. The Melodari reaffirmed their support. The Varathi, after some debate, agreed to recognize humanity as an equal species. The smaller species, those who remembered what it was like to be dismissed and marginalized, were often the quickest to offer welcome. Not everyone agreed. 2 species, the Kreth Collective and the Yashan Dominion, maintained their objections. They argued that humanity's deception disqualified them from trust, that their military power made them a threat regardless of their stated intentions. But they were outvoted. By the end of the session, 10 of 12 council species had formally recognized humanity as a peer civilization. The quarantine zone was abolished. The observer period was ended. Humanity was free. As the votes were tallied and recorded, Dr. Chun found herself standing beside the Melodari delegate. The crystalline being regarded her with something that might have been amusement. "You knew, didn't you?" Chun asked. "When you first contacted us, you knew this day would come." The Melodari's voice chimed like silver bells. "We suspected. Your species had a quality we had not seen before. A patience that seemed like passivity. A gentleness that might have been weakness. But beneath it, something harder. Something that would not yield." She paused, her form shimmering with inner light. "We warned you about the galaxy, about the dangers you would face. We hoped you would survive, but we never imagined you would do so well." Chun smiled. "We had good teachers." In the observation gallery above the chamber, Captain Webb stood watching the proceedings. His first officer, a woman named Lisa Rodriguez, approached. 6 months had passed since the human fleet appeared at Nexus Prime. 6 months since the council vote that changed everything. The galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality, but signs of transformation were everywhere. The council chamber looked different now. The seating arrangement had been modified to include a 13th position, equal in height and prominence to the others. The holographic display systems had been upgraded with human technology, sharper and faster than anything the elder species had built. And the delegates themselves seemed different, less certain of their own superiority, more willing to listen before speaking. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the human seat, watching as the day's proceedings unfolded. It was a routine session, trade agreements and border disputes, the ordinary business of galactic governance. But ordinary had taken on a new meaning in recent months. The current matter involved a species called the Tithrani, a young civilization that had recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They were petitioning for observer status, just as humanity had done 50 years before. The Tithrani envoy was a small being with green scales and nervous eyes. She stood on the speaking platform and presented her species case, clearly expecting rejection. Her voice shook slightly as she described their achievements. Their first colony, their developing fleet, their hopes for the future. When she finished, the council began its deliberation. The old patterns tried to reassert themselves. The Kreth Collective argued for an extended observation period. The Ashen Dominion suggested that the Tethrani needed more time to prove their stability. But before the familiar arguments could build momentum, Chun rose from her seat. "May I speak?" Vethener, still High Counselor but humbled by recent events, gestured permission. "I remember standing where that envoy stands now," Chun said. "I remember the fear of rejection, the hope that perhaps this time would be different. The knowledge that my species' future depended on the goodwill of beings who saw us as children." She looked at the Tethrani envoy with genuine warmth. "The Council denied our petition. They extended our quarantine. They made it clear that we would never be accepted on our own merits, only on their schedule. We had to prove ourselves through other means." Chun turned to address the full council. "We have an opportunity here to build something better. Not the old way, where young species are kept isolated until they develop the power to force their way in. A new way, where potential is recognized and nurtured. Where every civilization is given a fair chance to contribute." She sat down. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, Vethener rose to speak. "Ambassador Chun is correct. The old system served the elder species well. They maintained our dominance and our security. But they also created resentment, distrust, the very conditions that led humanity to build a secret fleet instead of asking for help." He looked around at his fellow delegates. "I propose that we grant the Tethrani observer status immediately. Let them learn from us openly. Let us learn from them. Let this council begin acting like what it claims to be, a community of civilizations, not a hierarchy of power." The vote was called. 9 species supported immediate observer status. 3 abstained. None opposed. The Tethrani envoy stood in shock as the result was announced. Her scales flushed with color, a sign of overwhelming emotion in her species. She looked up at the council, unable to find words. Chun caught her eye and smiled. "Welcome to the future," the smile seemed to say. "We built it for you." After the session ended, Chun made her way to a private meeting room. Vethener was waiting for her there, along with Captain Webb, who had returned to Nexus Prime for the anniversary of the first contact. "That was unexpected," Webb said to Vethener. 6 months ago, you would have argued for the longest possible observation period." Vethener made a gesture that meant acknowledgement among his people. 6 months ago, I believed I understood the galaxy. I believed that the systems we had built were necessary and right. I believed that younger species needed to be controlled for their own good." He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Then you showed me the flaw in that thinking. You showed me what happens when we force capable species to hide their true nature. You showed me the cost of arrogance." Webb joined him at the window. "We did not mean to shame the council. That was never the goal. I know, but shame was necessary. Perhaps not for humanity, but for us. For me." Vethener turned to face the humans. "I have ruled my people for 3 centuries. I thought I had learned everything worth learning. Instead, I discovered that I had stopped learning altogether." Chun spoke up. "The Tethrani will remember this day. They will remember that the Council chose welcome over suspicion. That memory will shape everything that follows." "As our memory shaped us," Webb agreed. "The Melodari warned us about how the galaxy worked. That warning drove 50 years of preparation. It made us what we are." He looked at Vethener directly. "Now you have a chance to create different memories. Better ones. The species that emerge after this will remember a council that offered its hand instead of a closed door." Vethener was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something remarkable. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small device, ancient and clearly precious. "This is a healing crystal," he explained. "In Keth tradition, it is given only between close allies. It represents trust, vulnerability, the willingness to accept help when we are wounded. He held it out to Chun. For 3 centuries, I gave these only to other Keth, to members of my own clan. I never imagined giving one to an alien, much less a species I once dismissed as primitives. Chun took the crystal carefully. It pulsed with a faint inner light. Thank you, High Counselor. This means more than you know. I am learning what many things mean. It is an uncomfortable process, but a valuable one. Vethaner's expression shifted slightly. For a Keth, it might have been a smile. Your species has a saying, I believe. Something about old dogs and new tricks? Webb laughed. I'm surprised you've had time to study human idioms. I have had time to study many things. Your literature, your history, your philosophies. Vethaner shook his head slowly. You are a remarkable species. Violent and gentle. Suspicious and trusting. Capable of terrible destruction and extraordinary mercy, often at the same time. We are complicated, Chun admitted. We contain contradictions. It is one of our greatest weaknesses and our greatest strengths. I am beginning to understand that. I am beginning to understand many things. The 3 of them stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching ships move through the space around Nexus Prime. Human vessels now flew alongside Keth and Varathi and Melodari, trading and cooperating as equals. What happens next? Webb asked eventually. The immediate crisis is over. Humanity has been accepted. The Council is changing. But the galaxy is vast, and change takes time. Vethaner considered the question carefully. What happens next is that we continue. We make mistakes and correct them. We build trust slowly, through actions rather than words. We remember that every species, no matter how different, deserves the chance to prove itself. He looked at the human captain. You taught us that restraint is a form of strength. That choosing not to act can be more powerful than any weapon. That lesson will take generations to fully absorb. But we have begun to learn it. Chun touched the healing crystal she now held. And what we have learned from you is equally valuable. Patience in the face of arrogance. Dignity in the face of dismissal. The courage to admit when we are wrong. She put the crystal away carefully. Humanity did not come to the stars to conquer. We came to find companions for the journey. We came seeking wisdom and beauty and truth. We came because we believed that the universe was too vast and too wonderful to explore alone. Her voice carried the weight of 50 years of waiting, of building, of hoping. Now we begin that exploration together. All of us, elder species and younger ones. The proud and the humble. Those who have made mistakes and those who have forgiven them. Webb nodded. A new chapter. Not just for humanity, but for everyone. Outside the window, a human freighter passed alongside a Keth cruiser. Their crews would be trading stories by now, sharing meals and languages and dreams. Small connections that would multiply over time, building a web of understanding across the galaxy. The old order had not been destroyed. It had been transformed. The elder species still held their power and their traditions. But now there was room for new voices, new ideas, new possibilities. Somewhere in the vastness of space, other young species were taking their first steps toward the stars. They would encounter the Council eventually. And when they did, they would find something different than what humanity had found 50 years ago. They would find a door that was open. They would find hands reaching out in welcome. They would find a galaxy that had learned at last that true strength lies not in the power to dominate, but in the wisdom to include. The story of humanity's first contact had ended. But the larger story, the story of a galaxy learning to become something greater than the sum of its parts, was only beginning. And in that story, there was room for everyone.